All right, everyone. Welcome. This is Ashanti Golar, the founder of the Brown Girls Guide to Politics. Thank you, everyone, for joining this special BGG Live. And we're going to be talking to Ashley Etienne, who is a senior advisor for the Biden campaign. She is a bigwig in politics. She's just done such amazing things. And in true BGG fashion, we have to start with you telling us, how did you get involved in politics?
Well, I mean, growing up, I had always had this curiosity about the state of my own people, of Black folks, right? And growing up in a more sort of suburban neighborhood, we traveled to the city, and I asked my dad, I think I was probably like 6 or so years old, like, why is it that this particular neighborhood looks different than mine, or why my neighborhood looks different than theirs? And the point he made to me was that there's a lot of factors. And many of them are driven and decided in Washington, D.C. And if you don't like it and you think things should change, then you should go to Washington. And so that was like the extent of the advice. It wasn't like, it's like, oh, this person, let me get you connected. Let's go down to the local Democratic office. It was like, that was the extent of it. And so literally after that moment, I just was on a quest to get engaged and to be like an agent of change, to sort of hype it up a little bit. I remember when one of my line sisters told me she was going to watch, so I hope she's watching. Hey, Crystal. But she told me, I remember when I was, when we were going through our, what do you want to call it? When we were there for our interview. It wasn't really an interview, but what do they call that? When you go for informational, whatever it is. So it was an informational. And so we all had to stand up and introduce ourselves and say what we wanted to grow up to be, right? Like, what's your profession? What are you studying? And I literally remember saying then I wanted to get involved in politics, and I wanted to be involved in politics. And again, I had to pay my way through college, didn't know anyone. So at the end of when I graduated, I went and worked in the Texas State Legislature, literally knocked on a member's door, told the lady why she should hire me. She happened to be one of my sorority sisters, so it worked out well. And don't be fooled by the pink, by the way. So I'm gonna tell you. So nevertheless, so she hired me. I had a really great experience, and I told her, I said, listen, I want to go to Washington. She said, well, I don't know anyone in Washington, but you can use my letterhead. Go for it. And I literally wrote out. I got on a plane, came to Washington, knocked on 5 doors. I wrote out, it's probably the beginning of my communications career, a pitch for each office. They were tailored for each office, why you should hire me, very specific points, what I could offer, right? And I got three offers out of the 5 doors I knocked on. And then I literally just started from the bottom, to quote Drake, and now I'm here, and worked my ass off. And, I was the first person in the door every morning, the last one to leave. I just kind of immersed myself in it. I'm like you, I love it. I can't, now I'm kind of slowly getting over it because I've just sort of done everything. But just to give give folks a little more about my background. So I literally started at the front desk. I was a front desk person, and then worked hard. I've done almost everything there is to do in DC, but to make it really short, I eventually worked for Speaker Pelosi twice. In between those 2 tenures, I went to the White House to be a special assistant for Barack Obama and the director of communications for the cabinet. So there was no way, to our point earlier, when I started on here, there were no girls who looked like me in leadership. There were none who were doing communication. So I was sort of on an island of my own, and out there trying to figure it out on my own. And literally just, again, worked my way all the way up to the top, hit the pinnacle of the White House. Never thought in college, when I said I want to be in politics, that I would be a part of the team that elected the first Black president. Had the honor and the privilege of working for him. I've got a commission from him on my wall, which is amazing, where he says, I, Barack Obama, appoint Ashley Etienne. It's really pretty amazing.
Nice.
Yeah, it's very amazing. And then to, leave the White House, decide, I went to go see Hamilton, which is an amazing play if you've never seen it in person. And I kind of got the bug. It was like my Godfather moment. I just got sucked back into the process. Ended back in the leader's office at the time, Pelosi's office. We had to win the House back and then go after Donald Trump. So we won the House back. She became the speaker again. And then I got the honor and the privilege of running the war room, the impeachment war room, which was, again, one of those, historic moments, and I was at the center of it, sort of guiding that whole ship. And now I decided, like, look, it's different battlefield, same energy, same enemy. I decided I had to come to the campaign because there was, nothing more important. There's nothing more consequential than this election. We got 34 days left. I think the last time I said it was 45 days, we're at 34 days. And again, we say every year and every cycle, like, this is the most important election of our lifetime, but literally this one is. It is, an issue of life or death. We're stuck in these houses, fearful of getting out. Our kids aren't in schools. The economy is tanking. 30 million people are unemployed. 250,000 people lost their lives. 1 in 6 small businesses has gone under and is not coming back. We are at a crisis point in our nation. You got a president who's stoking racial animus and racial fear. You've got, an individual who's self-interested first. Do you know what I mean? I don't know how you're the president and you're interested in yourself first and not the American people. Mm-hmm. And again, I think the scary part is I can look back on the last 4 years, and there were people at every point saying he wouldn't dare do that. And we've seen it happen.
Yeah.
There are kids in cages 4 years later. The president is actively trying to undermine the next election, admittedly undermining the next election. I mean, it blows your mind, right? Who has, again, frayed all aspects of our democratic process, fractured all the ties that bind us as a nation. So these are, there's nothing more consequential than this election. So with that, I will close by saying, and then I'll let you ask another question, close by saying that we need people to vote early. States are already starting to vote. So we just need to make sure that people aren't waiting till November 3rd to actually vote. We need on November 3rd for the election to be decisive. Mm-hmm. We need a landslide, because as the president said last night, he is going to come hell or high water, come nothing. He's going to do it anyway. He's going to test the election. He's going to question everything. And it's going to be a drag out fight to get him out of there. And so we need, again, which is why we need people to vote early and across all the states. But that's my political story.
See, I told y'all Ashley is everything. And who better to have on the Biden campaign than the woman who spearheaded the messaging that got him impeached. So that also means you're the perfect person for us to digest that debate with.
Okay, let's get into it.
So I'm going to tell everyone my final tweet of the night after the debate was, woo chow, Joe Biden is better than me, because thankful to the vice president for being up there. He did an amazing job, but I was frustrated with Trump constantly talking over him.
Yeah.
Every time that the vice president made a good point that Trump knew was sticking, we saw him talking over the vice president. So there were so many important things that the vice president had to say, and I want to hit on some of them. One of the most shocking moments, and I say that it was shocking, but it was not shocking, but him not dog whistling, but in my opinion, dog hollering to the Proud Boys. And once again, not condemning white supremacy and low-key telling them to intimidate people as they are heading to the polls to vote. Because like you said, we are in the general election. People are voting. So what went through your mind when you heard Trump say that?
I mean, just hearing you say it again gives me anxiety. I think, it's sad. I can't think of, it's sad. It's frightful. It is anxiety inducing. It is not at all what I want for my kids' future, and I think that's what we all have to really examine. I was just on another call with a friend who's like, oh, I got these independent friends that are still on the fence. I'm like, on the fence about what? Because I'm confused. Like, 'cause everything has been so blatant and so clear. To your point, it's not a whistle, it's a bullhorn, right? And he makes no apologies about it. And, from my perspective, it is what we have to do is, and I'm trying to do this every day, right? Is take all of that energy, all of that anger, all of that anxiety, and channeling it into action, right? I.e., voting early, having conversations with your independent friends about what's at stake, why they shouldn't be on the fence. Getting on a phone bank, we need it. I think the one thing that is not that I want you to have, and people who are watching to have an appreciation for, is that we're trying to do something that has never been done before. We're literally running a virtual campaign virtually. That has never happened in the history of our nation ever before. So where you would normally see us on the ground, knocking on doors, we lost 6 months because of COVID. No doors being knocked on, right? No events, no church visits, concerts, none of that stuff is actually happening. So all of that anxiety that I felt and that people feel, we have to challenge it, because again, we're in this unknown territory and state, not just in terms of these big crises that we're facing, from the economy to COVID to healthcare, but literally the fact that we're all trapped in our houses, right? And that we can't get out, and that we can't communicate, that we can't engage each other. And so figuring out what to do with that, and how do you channel that to end this guy's presidency. That's basically it, and we can't stay trapped and paralyzed. I feel like I've heard this so much from Donald Trump, it's not surprising. I think what's surprising to me is that people are still on the fence. What's surprising to me is that people aren't more offended. It's like, to quote Dr. King, it's the silence of my friends that's the greatest betrayal. And I think so we're screaming about it, we're hollering about it, we're marching in the streets globally about it. But literally, what about these independent Republicans? What about these Republican suburban women, right? What about all of these members and people who were calling themselves patriots, and now all of a sudden, we don't even recognize our own country, and they have nothing to say about it. And the president is taking us down this really dark path where there is no end in sight. So, I wasn't surprised by it at all. It really is anxiety inducing. But what I did was, like, I got to double down on my efforts. Mm-hmm. And that's what we need everybody to do, is like, put your foot on the gas. We got 34 days, no time to waste. Don't even waste your time getting obsessed with what Donald Trump says and how he acted last night. Let that be your motivator. Let that be the energy that drives you to do something about it. Like, literally, we have all the power in this dynamic. He actually doesn't. You know what I mean? His power is to intimidate us, to make us fearful, right? Is to keep us suspended. And the reality is, though, is like, we have all the power to change this entire dynamic, right? We've got to vote early, and make sure we take 5 of our friends with us. To quote our former president, take Pookie and them off the couch. We need everybody's got to engage, because we can't afford it. I think, the thing I always say to people is, like, just the idea of another 4 years of this guy just really scares me to death. It's like, because you think about the damage already done, that it's going to take so much energy and time for us to repair. I remember the speaker and I were talking once upon a time, and she was like, I wish I could, sort of frustrated with this administration. I was like, hit delete on the whole thing. Like, the damage that it's causing and doing, again, to the very fiber and fabric that connects us as a nation is fraying. Our democracy is questioned. Our global standing in the world, like, is laughable at this stage, and like no other. And I just think that, like, these are serious times, and we got to take them seriously, and really find a way to channel all of that energy.
Yes. And we know Vice President Biden is taking it very seriously. I thought some of his best moments during the debate were when he looked directly into the camera and was talking to the American people. And you felt that sense once again that here's a leader who actually cares about us. Here's a leader who has a plan. And I know one moment that really got me is when he talked about the empty chairs that are at the table because of all the people who have died from COVID. And at this point, we all have lost someone to COVID or know someone who has lost someone to COVID. It is a part of, like, our lives now. when I'm talking to young people, I tell them all the time, this part of the world of history is going to be in history books. We are living during history. So I think I would love to hear more about the Biden-Harris plan to address COVID, because the fact is we know that Trump has never had a plan and he still doesn't have a plan.
Yeah, I mean, I think one thing that should give us some assurances, and I've sort of think we need to do a better job of this, and that is talking about proven leadership. Like the vice president is not the vice president for no reason, right? Like he was part of one of the most successful administrations in our nation's history. Like, let's just think back on those 8 years, and I call them like glorious days. The BGG party at the White House is legendary. But let's just think back on those days, because I think, you know, people are sort of a little unsure. I'm not sure what I'm going to get with Biden. I'm not, you know, I'm not sure about, you know, again, I'm still on the fence. Like, let's just think back. So in 2008, historic moment, glorious time, but it was also, we were in the middle of a recession. Mm-hmm. You recall that? And Obama and Biden took this recession, flipped it, and put us on a path of like record economic growth. We handed the President Trump the strongest economy we'd had in several decades, literally handed him the strongest economy we had in several decades. And now it's squandered. Again, 300 million people out of work. You know, 1 in 6 businesses going under, never coming back. And also, like, the vice president got the 3 a.m. call. You know how in politics we talk about the 3 a.m. call and like, can you pass the 3 a.m. call test? It's clear Donald Trump failed it. But when Biden, how about that? How about that?
I love it. I think that wasn't that a shirt? That was one of the shirts in 2008. Oh, Biden.
Right. Yeah, right. Like, you know, so nevertheless, when Obama and Biden were tested with Ebola, 4 people died. And that was a pandemic, right? That was a major health scare crisis. That's what leadership looks like. Transforming, turning around our economy, putting us on a path of record growth, being tested with a healthcare crisis, only 4 people dying. We got 207,000 people die from the coronavirus, and they're predicting upwards of 500,000 people will die. That's what real leadership looks like. And then a man of faith who puts himself before other people. Like, one of my favorite stories about him as being a single mom is him being a single dad. On the train every day from Delaware back to DC. And I just know literally how hard it was for me to leave my office and go pick up my kid 2 blocks away. I can't even imagine commuting back and forth to take care of my kids as a single parent. Like, that is what you want in a president. You know what I mean? And that's what we've been missing is that proven leadership, compassion, for your fellow American, this level of patriotism. And so, to your point, that looking the American people in their eyes, that was a tactical decision that was intentional on his part, because the idea and what we wanted to convey is that, you know, who matters in this dynamic? It's you and me. It's us as a collective, as a nation, not Donald Trump. It's always about Donald Trump with Donald Trump. But we matter in this dynamic. And so what he wanted to do is look people directly in their eyes, directly into the camera, and speak directly to their concerns and really lay out his plan. So, you know, what we didn't get to talk about in great detail is his plan to build back better. We, some stats to give you, and just some nuggets on the plan itself. You know, as it relates to African Americans, because I happen to be one and I love us, and I think we should really talk about us more often, is, we make record investments in the community, increasing home ownership by providing $15,000 low interest loan to new homeowners. When I bought my house, that was like a godsend. I think it was $10,000 at the time. I know that I could have done it without it. Canceling student debt. I definitely wouldn't have been able to buy a house at 25 if I had student debt. I got blessed in that regard that I didn't. But canceling student debt if you make less than $125,000, right? Increasing access to capital, investing $100 billion in small minority-owned businesses, right? So putting us on a path to not just doing well, but like building wealth. Right? Something that we can leave behind for the next generation. Like that's what Donald Trump doesn't want to talk about. And that's what we think the American people want to hear, which is why he was interrupting. But I will say one thing, and then we can move on to something else, is that, wherein he did a lot of interruptions and a lot of lies, it doesn't change the facts, and the facts on the table is that we're facing these incredible crises moments in our nation, and there is no way out. There is no clear way out. I'm not sure who's running the government. I'm not sure whose team Donald Trump plays on, but it doesn't feel like he's playing on Team USA. It's either that you don't know, you don't care, or you're inept, and it probably is all the above when it comes to him.
Yeah.
And I think that's the scary thing, is that you can't trust him with your country, with our country any longer. We've tried it. Some people decided they wanted to try it. I never decided I wanted to try it, but some people decided they wanted to try it. And I think we now know. It's very clear. It's evident. There's no more questions. This is what you're going to get from this guy. And it's only progressively getting worse. It's not getting better, right? It's only getting worse. So let's think about the COVID. I think you asked me about the COVID. Forgive me. So what we formed, I should say that Joe Biden raised the alarms in January about a pandemic. That was around the same time that Trump was getting intelligence briefings about a pandemic. And you recall the Woodward tapes that came out where Donald Trump admitted to Bob Woodward that he knew that it traveled in the air. He knew it was going to be more devastating than the flu, but he made a conscious decision to lie. He lied and people died. And that I just think is unforgivable. And listen, you don't want your kid, your man, pick anybody. I don't want you lying to me. Let alone the president lying to the American people and putting our health and safety and economy in jeopardy. For what? For your own self-interest? Like, to me, I'm not sure who's at my door, but to me, that's forgive me, my daughter loves that doorbell, so I had to get it for her. It's just it's unforgivable. And I just think that you can't trust him with not one more second on the job.
Yeah. I agree with everything that you said. And Trump only cares about Trump. And that is very clear. And there was the moment last night about his taxes where, yet again, he felt that it was fine for him to only pay $750. And I love Cardi B. And I know she had this great interview she did with him. And she has this clip on her Instagram of her watching the debate. And she's like, tell me, like, I want to know, how are you paying $750 in taxes? Because Cardi always talks about how much she has to pay in taxes. But for me watching that, it was just like Vice President Biden says, he cares about Wall Street and not the people from Scranton, from his background where he is. And it's refreshing just to know that Vice President Biden has a plan. And it sounds so simple saying that, but after 4 years of Trump, you just want that good leadership. And you're going to get that with Vice President Biden.
Yeah, we formulated a series of commissions around COVID. So one to address the testing issue, right? How do we need to ramp up the testing? The other is on the vaccine. How do we not only make sure it's secure and safe, but that it's free to some degree? We also have one on school reopening. So the Vice President and Senator Harris have been meeting with these experts. So like each commission is like a panel of experts. And so they've been meeting with him and formulating a more robust plan to address the COVID on all fronts. And I will say one thing that you will not get from a Biden and Harris administration is total abdication of responsibility and abandoning the states. I mean, that's what we've seen from this administration. The president's like, you're on your own, best of luck. The states were infighting, competing against each other for PPE and protective equipment and money and funds. And it was just, and it has been a colossal mess. And what you won't get is an administration that won't be led by the science. So we will be an administration that's led by the science, and you won't get one that will try to bake and cook the numbers, right? And try to force the CDC to lie upon another lie, again, to risk and put people in harm's way. So literally, so none of that will you get in a Biden-Harris administration. And as I said, the first plan of action is to continue these conversations that we're having with experts, to formulate a plan, which which many of the pieces we've already introduced and will continue to introduce, especially given that's an evolving process, to work with Congress to pass legislation. As you know, the HEROES Act was passed by the House, which be a $3 trillion investment in small businesses, meeting the needs of local communities and states. And the President of the United States is sitting on the bill. The Senate is sitting on the bill. They refuse to move on that bill, refuse to actually provide aid to the American people and states to address this mess that he's gotten us in. Literally, it's a mess that he's gotten us in. And now he's refusing to fix it. And then he wants you to trust him with 4 more years. That is just unfathomable. I can't even really wrap my head around that. And I'm not even sure why we're even in a race right now. Like, 'cause it's just, it's just so plain and so simple and so clear that, again, we can't afford 4 more years of Donald Trump. Not personally, can we not? And definitely not as a nation can we afford it. And definitely not as a democracy. I'm just not sure what'll be left if we get 4 more years. And that's not an exaggeration. It's not hyperbole. It is based on the facts. The situation is only getting worse. Again, to your point, the president has yet to even produce a plan. Even if it's 1 state, 2 states, let alone a 50 plus 1 state strategy to address this issue. I mean, there are other countries. South Korea got their first case of COVID the same time we did. I think they've experienced 334 deaths. 334 people have died because they had good leadership. We're now looking at, again, potentially 500,000 people dying. We haven't even gotten to the flu season. So yeah, I mean, listen, everything's at stake in this election. Everything we believe in, from our economic security to our healthcare security to our own personal security. I am really, engaged and concerned about brothers getting shot in the back 7 times, sisters getting shot in their house, and there's no apologies for it, no accountability for it. I mean, that is a scary dynamic, and the president is perpetuating it all, is sanctioning it all, right? That is a scary state for us. So I just think that, I'm glad you're engaged in this conversation. Hats off to you for engaging us, sisters and everybody, even bigger than that and beyond that, about not only the state of politics, but the need to get engaged. After we win, my one piece of advice to you and to others, which I know you're going to be engaged in this, is to hold us accountable. Like, don't let up. That's the only way we actually get policies that work for us, a government that's responsive to us, which we will be. But, again, we all have a job and a part in making this democracy better and more ideal. So.
Now, what you said about the democracy piece, I remember after Trump got elected, so many people would ask me, so what do you think we're going to see out of this administration? And I said, we're going to see how fragile democracy is.
Yeah.
And we have absolutely seen it over these past 4 years. We can't have 4 more. And I love that you talked about the Biden-Harris plan for school reopenings. We did a great conversation with Latina leaders from Arizona talking about it. And the plan is great, but one of the things that really stood out to me in the plan is talking about expanding mental health services for the students for when they come back. And just the fact that Vice President Biden and Senator Harris were already thinking about the fact that a lot of these kids are going to be traumatized from everything that has happened, and we need to be there to support them. And having that sort of compassion in your leadership is so important. And we also know young people really care about climate change. And we have Latricia Adams, she's one of the leaders for a climate group, do a blog about young people and climate change. And I want to see them bring it at the debate on this issue. So tell us a little bit more about the Biden-Harris plan for climate change, but also knowing that it disproportionately impacts Black, Brown, and Indigenous communities.
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, what we've seen in this administration is an EPA and other agencies that are solely bought and owned by the special interests. They've polluted our communities, which is why we have high rates of asthma, right? And high rates of lead contamination, like in Baltimore, not far from here, right? I mean, so it's a real issue that I think we don't really talk about enough, right? In the context of sort of racial justice. When I worked in the administration, Secretary Fox used to talk about how when cities were constructed, transportation was used to divide communities, right? Disenfranchise certain communities. And then because of the design of the cities, then polluters went to our communities and polluted our communities because they were, less attractive, appealing, and there weren't any investments being made in those communities other than to throw a plan. And they're like, oh, here's your jobs, right? Not understanding the ramifications of having a plant in your backyard, right? And the consequences of that on the people who live, drink, and breathe in those communities. So climate change, is a huge issue for the VP. You recall we entered into the Paris Agreement Accord. While I was there, I worked on that a little bit. I cannot say that I'm an expert on climate change. I'm an expert messenger, so I definitely know how to synthesize it down to some really, simple points, right? But and of course, the president almost immediately in office pulled us out of that agreement, and so, if we get back, if we win again, or when we win again, I shouldn't say if, when we win again, we definitely would re-enter into the Paris Climate Accord and really start. And this is part of the Build Back Better plan, is to build an economy that's 100% built on clean energy. And making a commitment to addressing the, I don't know if you would call them disparities, but the disenfranchisement and environmental disenfranchisement of communities of color in a very aggressive, robust way. As you know, this has been a really important issue for the senator as well, in her work in the Senate. So I think, so those are some, in the short term, immediate things that we would do, and really just sort of refocus our agencies that are doing this work, right? EPA, Interior, others, and really focus their investments in these communities that have been left behind and really sort of an afterthought in the climate debate. That's why I was so excited when AOC came on the scene. I was like, oh my God, this is great. We got a young Latina who's going to take on this issue, take it across the country. And I remember when I was working in the speaker's office, and like the first day of our first day of the new Congress, she led a protest in the speaker's office about the Green New Deal. And she wanted a select committee on climate. And it was so funny because we were like, no, like, listen, passions align. We announced 2 weeks ago we were going to do a select committee. Would you like to be on it? But nevertheless, so I would say that this has been a priority for Democrats, from the speaker to the VP when we were in the White House, to the senator when she was, in her capacity in California. So there is an overwhelming commitment to moving us forward in this area. I just think that, what you'll see in a new administration is really targeted investments into Black and Brown communities. There's been a greater awareness thanks to Letitia. Is that what you said? Is that her name?
So
Letitia,
yeah.
excuse me, and others and AOC and others who've been really actively involved in pushing this conversation forward. So yeah, so I'm encouraged by it. I think it is, again, it's an issue that I think we should really speak more about and really focus more about. I think we just had the senator was in Michigan and did an event and met with activists there that were very engaged in the Flint water crises. She insisted. In fact, we were like, well, we got these other ideas and these other things that we want to do. She's like, no, 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 no. I'm not going to Flint, to Michigan at all without meeting with activists who are keeping this issue alive and making sure people have clean drinking water, et cetera. So again, the commitment runs deep.
Ashley, we thank you so much for your time, your knowledge. You said we got 34 days until November 3rd to bring this home. Tell everyone, what are the top things that they can do over the next 34 days to get involved and make sure we get a victory?
Yeah, so you can go to iwillvote.com, find out how, when, and where to vote. Again, as we've both mentioned, people are already starting to vote in states across the country. So we need people to go out and vote early. Do not leave this to November 3rd. We need it to be decisive and clear on November 3rd. Not you waiting in line all night, but literally get it done before then. There are a lot of great organizing opportunities we have. We have this great program called Sister to Sister that engages brown women in conversations about issues that matter to us, from climate change to healthcare to pay equity. And they also host phone banks. So you can go to joebiden.com and find an event near you, and they're all virtual now, which is kind of sad, but there's still a lot of work that can get done. And sign up for a phone bank. Literally. I think the third thing I would say is probably the most effective and impactful is to engage your friends, your relatives, people in your followers, your universe. Make the case for for dumping Trump. Make the case for a Biden-Harris administration, and encourage people to learn how to vote, when to vote, because as you know, they're trying to make it incredibly hard for us to vote.
Mm-hmm.
They changed all the rules in almost every state, some for the better, most of them for the worse. So, it's tricky. And so people need to go to iwillvote.com, and we need to encourage people to do that and learn how to vote in their states. There are a handful of states that every vote matters, but there are a handful of states where they matter even more so. Texas, Georgia, North Carolina, Florida, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, Arizona, Nevada. So we need people in those states to double down their efforts, put your foot on the gas, vote early, and take 15 people with you. I think, as I like to say, to quote Barack Obama, like, take Pookie and them, all your cousins. Literally, we need everybody. We can't run any risk on this one.
No, I hear you. I'm from Nevada. My family is still there. So it's important. We gotta get it done. Again, thank you so much, Ashley.
Thank you for having me. This is great.
I really enjoyed chatting with you.
Great. Let's do it again.
We
next time on the drinks, right?
Thank you, everyone, so much for joining us. Make sure you visit iwillvote.com. Make sure you visit joebiden.com. And next week, we got the vice presidential debate where we get to hear from Senator Harris.
Exciting, right?
Everyone. Have a good night.
Bye-bye.